Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Happy Monday.
Yay, Monday. Yay.
Yay. Are you starting to get Garfield-itis, Andrew? Not liking Mondays?
No, I love Mondays because it's like I'm such an introverted guy. You know, I flip the switch, but by nature, if I want to get work done, Monday means the day I get to see my friends. I get to see you, Bryce. I get to see Justin, and it's fun for me.
Yeah. End of list.
Brian too. Wait, yeah, right. Who? What? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun because it's sort of like my week sort of starts with,
with this
podcast,
Very cool.
and then after that, it's kind of like my week goes off into some, I go off into my little. So, maybe I'll save it for the podcast.
Okay. Bill Meeks. We got Bill Meeks in the chat. He says it's probably been 6 years since I caught a live Weird Things.
Wow, Bill, good to hear from you, sir.
JC Calhoun. Monday is one of the top 10 days of the week.
Controversial to put it in there, but I think it's tough but fair.
I don't know if it's a sign of my changing comedy tastes, but I love that. But I also immediately was like, that would be like a very good email forward, like you would put that in the Office. The Office jokester would forward you. Man, it's Monday, one of my top 10 favorite days of the week.
Well, but that's one of those lines that is also it's really dependent on delivery.
Yeah.
Because it's also it's a very dry. It is a make
sly,
you think
yeah.
kind of joke.
Yeah.
You have to be like, wait, oh,
there's
yeah.
only
Okay, sure. I get you.
Yeah. All right. Let me finish up my stuff here. Boop. Great. All right. I think I am ready to do the show. You guys ready to do Weird Things?
Yes, and I have no hard out today, so we're rocking and rolling.
Nice.
Yay!
And for everyone who is joining us wondering where Brian Brushwood is, he is going to be signing the property deal in the middle of probably near the end of Weird Things, so he's not going to join us today.
This is for the new base camp, the new HQ?
Yeah, the new
7-acre property
Mm-hmm.
in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Very cool.
JC Calhoun asks, where's Brian Pushbroom? He's on the ground. I forgot to set him up today, so he's taking a nap.
I have a feeling there's some sort of camera feed of Brian doing the Star Wars kid with Brian Pushbroom and then breaking him over his knee and then throwing him on the ground.
Maybe we might be able to get a little bit of a feed. He's over there in the corner.
Oh, geez. a few too many for Brian Pushbroom.
This is real TMZ type stuff.
Picking it up against the wall, yeah.
But so that should be signed by probably, or at least they'll have started signing it by the end of this podcast, and we'll have more to talk about. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it a little bit in the Cord Killers After Talk, our Patreon exclusive talk thing, and I'll talk, and I'm sure Night Attack will have a bunch to talk about it. So that's that.
I have an After Things topic too.
Oh, great.
Oh, cool.
Very cool. All right.
Cool.
Well, I'm good to go. If you're good to go, Justin, Andrew.
Let's go.
All right.
Yep.
Take it away in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Weird Things Podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Justin Robert Young.
Hello.
and Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Weird Things.
It's the original three. We insist that. That's the way it works.
Always
Brian is actually in the process of, when you hear the word compound,
Yeah.
don't always think negative. Compounds can be good things
Sure.
too.
I think
Compound
originally
W.
Yeah, Compound W. Yeah, I think the place that he's currently in the process of signing the deal on was a nudist colony, a nudist compound at one point.
It's
Oh.
perfect.
Oh no, yeah, no. Do you not know like the history of this place? That this is like part of why Brian fell in love with it. Was A, it was a nudist colony thing, and B, I think was it the owners that got caught up in the satanic panic?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
No, there's like a weird history.
No way this will backfire, and I'll see this on a news crawl on Fox News.
There's
no
that-
way. No way.
There's a I went and walked the property with Brian about a
A
month ago.
scam school right in the heart of Texas with ties to Satanists and a nudist colony.
There's an old school bus, like a yellow school bus that they used for
An
used or
abandoned
converted.
school bus. Where are the children?
But yeah, it's definitely. I think at last it was a massage parlor. Massage parlor.
My brother has some property in Georgia, and there's a school bus in the woods there too.
Oh.
We're like, I'm helping him clear some property. It's like, oh, take a look over there. I go through the woods, and there's this. I'm like, what happened? What is it? Like,
Something
you kids,
about
if you don't shut up, I'm gonna pull you into the woods and leave you there. Kids come home. Oh, the bus driver left us in the woods. Yeah.
get a new bus.
Although, like, if you buy a school bus and you're just screwing around with it, like driving it into the woods is like a cool, like it would be like a fun thing to do, right? Like all you want to do is take that school buses in places where you wouldn't normally see a school bus.
Like a
Sure.
magic school bus, if you will.
Aha!
Oh.
Yeah.
Though they usually brought the magic school bus back. They didn't leave it in that kid's body.
Okay.
No. Also, Miss Frizzle's a criminal and really should be like that. There was irresponsible. Like,
Yeah.
these kids aren't signing field trips.
Never saw it. Have no idea what it's about, but I can get the drift.
Arrest Miss Frizzle.
So, not getting the drift. Man, you ever like tweet something and then somebody's like, "Oh man, too soon" or whatever, and you're like, "What did I?"
Oh, and you weren't aware that
There was a
current event
thing or
happened?
anything. So I was at a conference in Denver this week.
Mhm.
It's great. Did a long drive too. There was amazing, beautiful. So before I left, I tweeted, "I'm going to emerge from my cave and make a rare public appearance at Denver, Colorado for WesterCon 71."
All right.
6 days ago, mind you. Okay.
Yeah.
So I get immediately right after that, I get somebody who's like, do you read the news? I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't. Quickly Google searching cave. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, but no, I think people realized I'm just an idiot and had no idea what was going on. So.
Yeah. So I think I have an idea about this story. Can you give me like a timeline? Because I've like now I have an understanding of the situation, but certainly as I was seeing news stories develop and around it, and probably the stuff that we're going to talk about, I wasn't sure when this started, when those people got in there, how they got stuck, who was still in there.
Like 15 days ago or so, the coolest soccer coach ever took his soccer team after like a practice on a little, expedition, and they went into, let's go into a cave. Caves are awesome. Like, they went to exploring this cave, and Thailand has a lot of some of the most amazing caves in the world. So they started exploring this cave, going deep into the cave, deeper into the cave, and like, kilometers into the cave. The problem is it started to rain. And this being Thailand and, a very, very mountains and stuff. So large amounts of surface area funneling water into small amounts of area. Part of the cave became submerged. Several parts of it had water that filled it all the way up for long passages. So all of a sudden there's trapped inside of this cave.
Oh, geez.
And people knew like, well, these kids like, hey, where are our kids? And they went missing and whatnot. And they realized like they're probably somewhere in the area. So there was a search to find them. And they found them like after like 9 days inside the cave. rescuers actually came through there and they found the kids and the coach there. Like, hey, a little help. So, and then now became this rescue effort. Now the problem is, I went through for a project for a network. I did a lot of dive training and stuff, and I did things like rebreather training, which is lets you to recirculate air. And then you talk around like, what are the most dangerous forms of diving? There's several different, some forms you can go really, really deep. That's dangerous. The most dangerous form of diving, of which I have not done, I don't know if I will do, is cave diving. And that is part of the reason that cave diving is that you have to go through very, very narrow passages, right? You can become very, very disoriented as far as which way is what. Navigating a cave normally is problematic. When all of a sudden you lose a sense of what's up or down can be problematic. And then if you find yourself wedged in someplace and your oxygen intake starts to increase dramatically, you can run out of air. And that's why sometimes cave divers, they try to use like rebreathers because you get more air. And that's one of the reasons that like there's a really, I think, a neat movie called Sanctum, which is about cave diving. And cave diving is also an amazing thing too, because you're seeing these parts of the world that sometimes nobody's ever seen them. They've been there for millions of years. So I think James Cameron produced that. But anyhow, it's a very dangerous thing. And so, Thailand has an amazing, their own version of SEALs. These guys are very highly trained, whatever. And so they sent one guy in there and back and forth. And they sent some of their own version of SEALs in there with the kids. One guy was going back and forth trying to handle supplies, whatever, and he suffocated and died in there because you can run out of air, and it's because you don't know how long a passage is. You don't know how much water is necessarily in there, and that's one of the many dangers. And so,
especially if you're dealing with a dynamic landscape that can get submerged, like these kids, I'm sure they probably would not have had any issue climbing out or getting out if it was not submerged. But the fact that you now have to swim or get your way through in a different plane.
And you get currents. You think about that is you might have a current pushing you one way, and then when you're trying to go back. So one of the things you do, one of the tactics you try to do, like if you were shooting something underwater for several days at a time, hypothetically speaking, and you had, for one part of you had a lot of film crews, people like this and stuff, and running out of oxygen was a problem. You put bailout bottles everywhere. You have a bunch of bailout bottles, things like that. Do that, and so that means beforehand putting these bottles, extra oxygen tanks, things like that. You can use that. That's a normal thing. But when you're the guy that has to be the rescuer. And you don't have that option. And there are a number of stories of guys who went down. Like there's a story recently of a guy, a rebreather expert, who one guy died down there. So this other guy went down there and like, everybody got to rescue him. So he went down to retrieve the body. They're pulling the body, and the other guy died. The rescuer died because of an oxygen, lack of oxygen, whatever. So anyhow, it's a scary, scary situation. So. The Thai people are, as extremely resourceful and working on solving this and trying to figure things out. And meanwhile, Elon Musk had offered help too, and they built a kid-sized submarine in 8 hours. And put it out of
so I saw that thing, and it's like a little little metal pod that you stick one of the kids in and sort of traverse them through.
Yeah, because the challenges that you have is that you have some some of these kids that have been there 9 days without really food. Now they're getting fed, but a lot of them are still really weak.
Sure.
A lot of them, may be in different, some of them may not be as strong as the other ones. And, to try to train somebody, you could train somebody to scuba dive pretty quickly, the basics, but all of the problems that could happen in cave diving is the most challenging form of diving there is. So to take a 12-year-old kid through there, what they're doing right now is, I think, is the best thing is like when you can just do a buddy system, have an experienced diver, have plenty of bailouts along the way, so you're not going to run out of air, and have somebody monitoring you. And that in diving, what you do is you have somebody follow you, and so that's what they've been. I think they've got a number of the kids out there that way, but they shipped the little kid sub over there in case you have a kid who maybe is in a condition where he's not able to to do that, or might have some issue affecting that. So I think. Amazing rescue effort on behalf of the people of Thailand, what they're doing there, and it's glad to see people contributing, and I would say that it's the kind of cool thing about being a company like SpaceX is and Boring Company whatnot is you got some of the most amazing engineers in the world, and somebody like Elon Musk can say, all right, we can build this in 8 hours, I can have it on a plane, and we can deliver it there in case this is of help. So
but it reminds me a little bit of the miners from a few years back where
the Chilean miners.
Yeah. And it becomes sort of a rallying point for humankind when there's any amount of success in that, because it's such it's so precarious and life-threatening, and it could happen anywhere.
I mean, it could happen here. It could happen here, and we've had, we think of disasters here where we've sat back and just sort of watched this sort of thing. You think about Deepwater Horizon. We're watching this vent on the floor of the ocean just pump and pump and pump and pump, oil into the water and into the ecosystem. And you would think that, like, can't we solve this by now? Not necessarily, and then where people get trapped, things like that.
Right. Well, and to do it safely, at least,
Yeah. So, but it is kind of the cool thing about being, an engineer that kind of has an all well-rounded sort of background, is the idea that, like, we can go in there and try to go do this, and also part of it too is to think of, credit to, the Thai SEAL team is a lot of what they train for is they do a lot of their own, military counterterrorism, things like this, but also rescue stuff, and that's, a lot of, like, my brother's on FBI SWAT team, and a lot of what they sometimes train for too is, like, sometimes it's not about a bad guy. Sometimes it's about just disaster or whatever kind of, helping those situations.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, as far as what it was made out of, they used a cylinder. I think it was like an oxygen feed, liquid oxygen feed for one of the rocket engines, and that's what they took. They took this thing, they repurposed it, and then
the Elon Musk sub.
Yeah, the kid sub. So it looks like a torpedo, and the idea is you figure out what you can use off the shelf, what you can build. It doesn't have to be beautiful; it just has to function. You go for simplicity. So you could see that there were an oxygen tank attached to the exterior, ways to be able to weight it down, handhelds on it, and then they built this thing, put it in a tool, test it, make sure it's going to work, and then send it over, and hopefully they won't need it, but if it's a help, there it is. And, and also, like, something we can all think about is that part of what makes somebody like Elon Musk capable of what he does is he's a guy that thinks about how to organize and put something together like this really quickly. And that's something we can all do, on a small scale. You think about what's your disaster preparedness. Do you have enough water if something happens? Wherever you're at, there could be some sort of catastrophe, power grid failure, storms, whatever. Do you have enough to take care of it? Do you have enough water for yourself? Do you have enough food supplies for yourself? Do you have a generator? Do you have ways to take care of other people? Do you have a first aid kit? If you hear an accident across the street, are you able to respond quickly and help? And that's something we can all think about doing. So,
yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about post-apocalyptic scenarios and stuff, but, like, the emergency disaster preparedness is a really serious thing. I like their new. I saw last night that there are more wildfires in Northern California now, or. And it's a reality, that's not something to ignore.
Yeah, and it's not that it's going to become the prepper show, but I have there is a curve out in front of my complex where I would say that, like, once a year I hear squealing tires and some idiot kid decides he's going to take this curve really fast and slams into the tree. And so now, like, I don't need the 911 number. I've got the Burbank Direct Police number because of this. And that's coming. And I was a block away talking to a buddy as we go for a walk late at night. We hear a squealing car smash right into another car in front of a store. And it's like, all right, I've already got the number on speed dial. Here's the location. Here's this. And things like that you can, think about ahead of time to be able to, plan for. And then, doing CPR training, getting these sort of things happening there, because there have been times when I've watched things happen and I've done nothing because I'm like everybody else, like, wow, there's the thing happening. There's the thing happening. And then you're like, nobody's doing a thing. And there are times where I'm like, oh, let's go solve this thing or be part of it, or then back off when responsible people are there. But anyhow, just a piece of advice, don't wait for somebody else to bring help. Sometimes your help, and that can sometimes be 10,000 miles away, or it can be 10 yards away.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dude, it's, man, what an intense story. It's wild, man. I haven't really even kept much up with it, because I think it's one of those, as Bryce pointed out, kind of a made for 24-hour news kind of stories, because it's a constant tension that continues, to build and has obviously kind of captured the imagination. But holy crap, man. So scary.
Yeah. So we hope they get the other kids out there, and, our thoughts with the rescuer who, family, the rescuer who didn't make it. And that happens, every day we lose people who are whose job is to save our butts,
Yeah.
That's
running
what
headlong
happens.
into danger.
Gentlemen, I've got an interesting topic. It's kind of an after things thing, but I thought we'd talk about it here because, we have a really wide audience and this would be very helpful. Mm-hmm. And you ever read something like a study or research and you kind of go like, man, this kind of clarifies things a lot. And we talk a lot about passion and what you need to do and waiting for to find your thing. And it's so everybody I know, it's about everybody I've ever had a deep conversation with, it gets into that topic of wanting to know, what should I be doing? I'm waiting for the thing. I want to hear, trumpets and see angels and the lights of the heavens open up. And I know this is my thing, because we get a lot of stories like that. People, successful people and then I found this thing and it became my thing. And I've always been sort of skeptical of that. Not always, but I've become skeptical of that because I'm like, how much is that you telling yourself that this is your thing after the fact, so you can be like, well, yes, of course it was meant to be. I've had people like, oh, I did a magic show. Like, oh, of course I knew that. You're always into magic. I'm like, yeah, I was into robots. I was into science. I was into movies. I was into a lot of things. If I did robotics, you'd be like, oh yeah, of course. As a kid, you built robots. It seems obvious. And it's like, we reframe the story afterwards. A study came out that, and I found this through, by the way, one of my favorite sites. It's a little BuzzFeedy, but still has a lot of cool stuff. And sometimes I don't think it's accurate, but it's still interesting, is Science Alert. And the headline was, quit trying to find your passion, psychologists say, and do this instead. And it talked about some studies where trying to figure out how well did people who had fixed ideas on what they were capable of versus people who did not do with different things. For instance, somebody who said, no, science isn't my thing. I don't know science. I'm not really into science. And then you had them watch a documentary on some interesting documentary on science. The ones that already decided that wasn't their thing weren't as engaged as people are like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm open. Those people are like, oh, wow, that is really, really cool. And basically it talked about the idea, if you have a very firm idea, no, this is what I have to do, this is my thing, it leaves out, or it's going to make you inclined to exclude other opportunities and other things that may become more passionate for you. And the bigger point they made was passions are developed, not discovered. You pick a thing you have an interest in and you keep doing it and you develop a passion, you find out you become much more passionate for it.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to get into journalism or to photojournalism. And so I was going to go to, I was trying to go to Rutgers at the time. And then in my senior year, I took a photography class, or I had been taking these, computer science classes, and really enjoyed Photoshop. And so I wanted to get into graphic design by the time I graduated high school. And that's why I ended up going to the university that I did. And even there, the art school that they have at VCU, the first year everyone takes the same fundamentals year.
101, yeah.
Yeah. And so
or 100, yeah.
But yeah, and so you get these little 6-week courses where you get to try out other majors and stuff. So during that time I went and did the graphic design one, and I hated it because it was like 6 weeks of cutting out magazine photos and putting them on poster board, and I hated it. But then I ended up finding the major that I went into, which was about video and audio production. And so that's the sort of thing where, over a probably 3-year span, my driving, interest at, a very pivotal time in your life had changed radically twice. And that was, thankfully because of the ability to have exposure to all these various different things. I wanted to do photojournalism, so I was on the school newspaper, which got me into layout, which got me into graphic design. And then I hated that graphic design course, and that got me into doing video stuff. It's about
which also I think is a problem with graphic design courses, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But I do think that what people often mistake, well, there's 2 things. Number one, the first step, Andrew, I totally agree with you. I think that there are some people that are very, very, very good or become better at as they go along, mythologizing their own story, right? And understanding that the value of a bio or of learning of one's experience is simplicity, and within simplicity, you get the edit gene of like, all right, well, let's skip all that part where I was kind of confused, and let's skip all that part that I wanted to do something else, and let's skip all that part, and let's get right to, and then the heavens opened up and the trumpets blared, and I knew exactly what I was doing. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that I do think that oftentimes in people that I've talked to, there is a moment where all of a sudden something that you're trying seems easier, or you just realize that through repetition, you're like, oh, wait, I can operate at this kind of level that is impressive, or is enough to get me a job, or is enough to make me happy with the artistic output. Like, and that is kind of confused for the moment that God taps you on the shoulder and says, no, go do this thing now. Right.
I've described that as traction. You work, and then some moment, all of a sudden you get traction. Maybe it's all of a sudden 20 people are using your app, or 100 people are listening to your podcast, and you're noticing the next month 110. And that's tractions where all of your efforts, it's like a car spinning your wheels, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm connecting to the ground. I can see, put gas on the pedal. I go forward now. And I think that often is, there can be a long period if you've got to be working on something and developing in traction. Nothing like traction to increase your passion too, because you're getting a reward. And I think that's, the hard part is that often we've talked about this, you work and work and work without the feedback. I've been listening to the audiobook about Airbnb. Here's an idea. Now it evolved over time, and so sometimes what people heard, the early versions of it, was a little bit less clear to what it was going to be. But this was an idea that, like, everybody's like, this is dumb. But the original Airbnb really was an airbed and breakfast. And it was like, oh, it's for oversold conferences, and you provide them an airbed and breakfast. And at that narrow view is like, but early VCs who turned it down said, what we should have seen was not what it was right now, but what the team was capable of doing, how hard they were working, and what it could have been. Mm-hmm. And now Airbnb's, $40 billion valuation. But it was, you listen to the founders of this, they're like, they kept pushing, and people are like, this is a dumb idea. The first time they did it on a lark, they rented out their own apartment in San Francisco, and they had like 3 people, and they said, oh, months later, like, let's do this as a business. They go to South by, they do this again, and they get like 2 people. 2 people decide to go do this, but they stuck with it. They stuck with the idea and kept at it and had influence and help. But, they didn't know what these are designers. They didn't know what their passion was. Like, maybe we need to do something else. Maybe we need to do something different or whatever. But they kept coming back to it and developing. And the next thing you know, they're billionaires.
Yeah. Well, and part of traction, or something that goes hand in hand with traction, is your developing of expertise and skills, right? Like, as over time, whether or not people use your thing, you are more experienced at using the thing, modifying the thing, building and designing, and all the ancillary things around it. And so even if you have something that maybe gets a little bit of traction, you're at least broadening your horizons such that the next time you start something, you're not starting from zero, you're starting from a place of a foundation.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things too is now we live in, it used to be somebody would start a company, maybe they'd run it for a while, then they'd get ousted, whatever. And then there was this big period like, oh, you start the company, then you bring in senior management, and you just sell out and you go on. And then you found a lot of those companies just didn't really thrive because it just, something was missing. And then kind of you had in the, Zuckerberg era on forward, there's been a bigger drive to, like, if the CEO's committed to running this thing, even though they're starting off inexperienced, they will acquire the skills, and the skills to run, the management skills are much more easily to acquire on the job than the passion and the drive and the care about product. And
or you can surround them with people who can impart them, with those skills or influences.
Yeah, Zuckerberg cares about Facebook. Jeff Bezos cares about Amazon. And you get into the Twitter founders care, maybe don't know what to make of Twitter, but you have that. Until Travis Kalanick got pushed out of Uber, you knew this guy cared deeply about the company and building it. And it wasn't, my description of, why are Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk billionaires? Because the day they became billionaires, they weren't like, I'm done. I'm checking out, guys. I did what I came to do. And when you have that motive of like, I'm just going to try to make money and get out of here, you're not going to handle the discouragements, and you're not going to want to show up in the office to solve problems.
Sure.
So anyhow,
and you're certainly not going to want to once you hit the finish line. If you have a finish line in your head, then it's like, all right, great, I won. I'm out.
Yeah, and that just is like, the finish line is reaching this point, and it's like it's harder. But if you have the passion for product and making it better and anything, but also for all of us, the lesson I'd sort of say is that like you can say, hey, I want to write a book, and like, well, okay, now you're going to have to evolve into after you write the book, you're going to need to become a marketer. You're going to want to become, a publisher. You're going to want to understand these jobs, and it's frustrating, but that's the world we live in now, where you specialize for a period of time, but then if you want to build your career, then you got to adapt to something else and something else that sometimes reinforces it. But anyhow, speaking of reinforcement and support.
How about you head on over to patreon.com/weirdthings. That's where you can support this very show. Hey, listen. Guys, we do this show obviously every week, but also we do a little show called After Things that comes after Weird Things. And the best way, the fastest way for you to get that is to become a patron. If you become a patron right now, you're going to get your own audio RSS link. And when I say that this process is simple, I mean you can do it on your phone. Literally right now listening to this, you can pull out your phone, you can go to patreon.com/weirdthings, you can get your audio RSS feed, you copy it right there, you paste it into whatever place that you use, Google Play, iTunes, any of the other awesome podcasting apps like
Overcast,
Castro. You just paste that link right in there. That's it. Done. No
login,
into stuff.
No authentication. Yeah. It's simple, and it's just for you. So the Patreon makes it so easy.
You can adjust your pledge. You could do other stuff, and it never changes. Patreon knows what you are owed, and it will just start showing up for you. It's that easy. Patreon.com/weirdthings.
There's any of you guys see the latest Jurassic Park?
I didn't.
I have not. Did you? Did you like it?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I've not seen it. But there has been, and I wanted to talk about just the idea of we're getting more and more, de-extinction talk and conversations, and we're understanding a lot more about cloning and this and that, and one of the things I've talked about this before, like, there was, when the movie came out, and then when they did, the Jurassic World came out years later after the age of the internet, you got this sort of like, oh, we can't clone dinosaurs because DNA has a half-life. DNA, breaks down after a certain period of time, blah, 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 which we find out there's always exceptions to these things. One of the things is like in the presence of iron, DNA lasts much longer. I've heard from friends in laboratories that they're finding in like 65 million year old fossils and stuff, balls of what they think may be DNA, like strands of DNA where iron's present. And so nothing that's been published yet, but, and I mean, there is actually has been talk about that, but from this particular lab, not. But so there is talk about the idea that we're finding out that, like anything, nothing goes completely away, but you might be able to chop it up and scramble it a bit considerably. So there is still the possibility that we may be able to get getting more genetic information than we ever thought we could before. We push back how much information we can get out of fossils. We're finding it in places we didn't realize, and we're finding that even though there is, once they discovered there's a half-life to DNA, it breaks down after this period of time, was like, doors shut, we're done, sorry guys, can't clone anything or get DNA from anything else. Like, it's like, well, maybe, like there's certain things that, like, information loss in physics and things like that. I'm like, well, that's a point at which I'm not going to argue this. But when we're talking chemistry and biology and saying, we know for sure this thing can't do this, but there's not a physical limitation,
Well, the other weird thing about the dinosaur cloning argument is that, you're gonna have to evolve these creatures if we are going to bring back what we would refer to as dinosaurs. The Earth is different. You're probably gonna have to, for them to survive, they're going to have to be designer cloned to something that can survive in the modern world and wherever they're going to be kept. So it's like, look, there's no copy paste, magic button where we're just going to be like, all right, these things that lived, now they live again exactly as they would. So, but at the same time, as soon as we see one of those dudes out in the wild, it's going to be a dinosaur. We're going to call it a dinosaur. Yep. And for all intents and purposes, that's what it's going to be. And yes, it will be different, but we will call it a dinosaur, and that is indeed what it will be.
So this is a dumb question, maybe. Well, do you think we...
Welcome to dumb things.
Do you think we could survive in a world where even designer dinosaurs are back? If someone cloned...
Paint the picture. What's your worst case scenario?
So
welcome to Weird.
Someone so a scientist in, say, Columbus, Ohio says, I'm gonna clone a modified T-Rex.
He's sitting right there at Dirty Frank's in Columbus, and he's like, all right, here we go.
I'm going to clone a T-Rex. I'm going to make some adjustants to it for
oxygen intake, lung capacity, whatnot.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, that'll still eventually be a very large predator on civilized soil. I don't know. How do we contain a dinosaur? The dinosaur threat is coming, guys.
It's like we could do an entire movie series about that. But to your point, you ever see like video of like circus elephants on rampages? Like there was a big one in like Hawaii. This elephant got loose, and it's just you're not prepared for this because you're using. First, you're like, do we want to shoot it? No, we have to shoot it. You start shooting at it. Like, guns are designed to stop people, not elephants, And like, if you look up video like elephant ramp, and it's terrifying because they start and they see people. They're like, it's dangerous. And so, yeah, we build a T-Rex. Precautions will probably have to be taken.
It's not reassuring, Andrew.
Well, no, I guess what he's saying is that this happens now. Like, we're currently dealing with this threat. Whatever threat a dinosaur would be to us, there are zoos and wildlife preserves for which there are brutal killing machines living amongst us right now.
Okay.
So we have the blueprint to do this.
So let me give you an example. What would we describe as, let's say, what is the most land predator right now? What is the land predator you fear the most?
Land predator? I mean, realistically, probably a snake because we're out here in Texas.
Well, that's a good point.
But in terms of like a large, unstoppable beast?
Give me your number one killing machine on land.
Maybe like a mountain lion or maybe like a mountain lion.
So the ones with like the consistently highest kill count probably would be tigers.
Okay.
You get tigers in parts of India that will go on rampages and may end up killing hundreds of people because they're really hard to stop. They're very stealthy. Grizzly bears can wipe out some people. Polar bears are kind of pretty fierce. Probably a tiger would be my guess. Is probably if you look at for what one individual animal can do and the amount of damage this thing can do, and one of these things on the loose around people was absolutely dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. Bryce, how many tigers are in captivity in the state of Texas?
In captivity, probably a handful.
How many is a handful?
I don't know, probably less than a dozen in the entire state.
Bryce, I want you to Google search right now, tigers in Texas.
I'm thinking like in zoos, but yeah, okay, tigers in Texas. What? What? So this is Google. Like Google has pulled this news thing. After India, the state of Texas now has the world's second largest tiger population. According to best estimates, there are more than 2,000 tigers living in the Lone Star State. The majority of them are kept as backyard pets. Holy Christ! What the hell?
Wait, so hold on. Are those, because I know for those kinds of animals you need licenses, so I guess are they pulling that number from state records of people that like the state of Texas has said, yeah, we checked out your backyard, you seem to have a fence, I guess.
So one of them
okay, you have tiger, or?
One of their that they're describing in this ABC News article, a Louis Dorfman built a special sanctuary for his 22 tigers. So that feels like someone who is working within working within some system, I would think. Lawmakers are now considering legislation forcing tiger owners to build safer cages and carry liability insurance in order to make Texans treat their tigers more like wild animals and less like pets.
So
You don't have to have insurance? What? You should have to have insurance if you own a tiger.
Stars at night are big and bright. Apparently, since 1990, there have been 22 tiger deaths. People killed, Texans killed in state by tigers.
No!
I like
Bryce,
this specify
you
state,
are
not counting the
living-
Texans that went to India and decided to pet them.
No!
You are living your nightmare right now. The cold eyes of a tiger, luminescent in the night, humid Texas summer air.
Well,
They have set upon you.
Smells your fear.
And there's no rules. There's no rules for wildlife out here. So we did Night Attack last week, Tuesday night. I got out of here about midnight or so, and I'm driving down the street. We're in this little suburban area, and there's like a little roundabout, and I've seen before at that roundabout, there's a little deer out in the grass, and it sees me, and it goes away, and I drive on. But I'm not even there. I am like on the streets where the houses are, and there are 3 deer just running down the middle of the street, just in open air, and enjoying the finely paved Texas road, to their delight. And those are just deer. Like if a tiger got out, oh my God.
Driving to Brian's place once, it's me, Odocta, and Brett. Deer literally just sideswiped the car. Just ran from the side of the road, head on, right into the, like, as if it were T-boning it, and then ambled off, I'm sure, with a broken neck to go die.
Oh,
like they are out there. Hopefully you can introduce a few tigers that just taking these deer down.
But those are deer. Those are prey, essentially.
You got yours a steer. You said it was like a steer you saw?
Oh no, it was
No,
deer.
Bryce. What was it you saw, Bryce?
I saw
out there?
deer.
Deer. Okay.
Like 3 very large deer.
I'm shocked that deer are on the run, on the loose here.
Those are prey, and they are roaming free. If you're a tiger and you're moving at night, you're keeping like it's. I don't know. There are stories of like bears getting loose in suburban areas or near wooded areas, and people kind of being on alert for it. But tigers are stealthy. I would feel like a tiger could evade detection for a very long time.
I'll tell you what, a bunch of tigers there at the Austin Zoo too. You never know when one can just jump a fence and like be right next to you at any time. Bryce.
They need to make the Austin Zoo with their infamous low fences. They need to do something about that.
Mm-hmm. So Bryce, back to your question about like dinosaurs around there. Like, you're living in a state with 2,000. Now, granted, there's a world of difference between a tiger and a T-Rex.
Sure.
But I think it could be scary. But keeping elephants in captivity sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Like these things are there. So, I think as long as they're not like, hey, get your own baby velociraptor. It's great for the kids, and they're in, toy. Well, what's a toy store now? But they're pick them up at Walmart. That might be a little problematic.
Okay, if I set the over under at 20, what year is it now? 2018. If I set the over under at 2028, 10 years from now, do you think over or under, or before or after, we will have our first dinosaur casualty from
I don't think
dinosaur will kill somebody.
Somebody, yes.
So I mean, by
you are already
2028,
skipping by. Will we have a dinosaur that people can go see?
You've convinced
you're
me.
Going right to when will it murder?
It's coming. You've convinced me of that.
I think the best case scenario we'll probably see by 2028 is we'll see this thing that looks like a cross between a dinosaur and a bird. And it might be a couple feet tall. I think we'll see that. And people are like, oh, bird. Like, oh, no, it's actually a dinosaur. I think we're going to see, because like if people like what Jack Horner and others, what they're trying to do right now is they're looking for sequences in bird DNA, because there still are like bird DNA. There is the code sequences for claws, and fingers and tails and teeth. And so that's what they're trying to do right now, is to figure out, like, in the embryonic process, can they keep these things from switching off and switch them on instead? And they're trying to do it, but with genes that are already there. Their goal is like, we want to show you, we want to prove evolution's real to the, one guy that doubts it. We want to prove it by showing you, as if this will convince, we want to show them by switching on these genes, that will then show you, like, yeah, all these dinosaur features were in this bird. That'll probably be the first thing we'll see, but then it's going to be probably not that big of a step when people are going to just say, well, because everybody knows, birds and dinosaurs essentially the same very, very similar. Birds evolved from dinosaur species, all this. Let's just keep adding stuff and tweaking stuff, let's keep, we can either try to switch on the genes were there because they have, the shared ancestry, or we can just go ahead and just insert stuff.
I just had a moment where I realized there's a good chance in my life that some version of a pterodactyl is brought back, and along with the buzzards you see out here in on the highways, there could also maybe be pterodactyls.
I think we go for Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds?
Terrorbirds. Are terrorbirds? Ever see those?
No, but I'm going to Google them because I don't know how compound words work.
So,
oh my god. Oh my god. Is this what a dodo was supposed to be?
What's that?
Is this what a dodo was supposed to be?
Oh no, dodo bird looked like its name.
Oh my goodness. These are terrible. They're almost, well, I was going to say they're kind of like cassowaries, but they're way bigger.
Yeah, they look like a battle version of a ostrich.
So
the last ones that we know of, the smaller ones, went extinct about 17,000 years ago or so. But that's not to say there weren't some bigger ones somewhere. They lived for most of human history, we lived with things like this. So, think about that. That there was a thing that, very dinosaur-like, that was around and probably did eat a couple people at some time, something like that.
My
We're looking at this creature, which imagine what looks like just a large bipedal dinosaur with fur and kind of winglets instead of wings, but a big, horrifying beak, and this thing is like eating horses.
It looks like a bird T-Rex.
Yeah.
Just it has the bird claws instead of legs, and it has, instead of stubby little arms, it has stubby wings. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's it's Phoruscidae, but terrorbirds. I can't pronounce it. And those things, they live from 62 million to roughly 1.8 million, but their species and smaller species were still around. And Titanus walleri, one of the largest specimens, Texas.
No. Texas and Florida.
Right. Wait, you're saying that could be like right around you at any time. Like you could just like be driving, and just like that horse, like you could just
pick me up, pick my little car up,
snap right up.
Oh my god,
that's terrifying. I'd be scared.
Yeah, I mean, because if I was going to try to bring them back, I mean, this was a better candidate than dinosaurs, than theropods, what have you, because we could probably use large bird DNA and eggs to cultivate this. I would do it in Texas.
I mean, make it feel at home, I guess, but oh my
I would do it in
goodness.
Austin, outskirts. You know.
Yeah, I would. In fact, I think like, there's like this new 7-acre property apparently that
Yeah.
maybe you
Yeah,
can-
they're great water features that I'm sure it would love. Oh,
a nice
jeez.
school bus for it.
You know, dinosaurs love former nudist colonies.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
crazy. Oh,
So,
Where
quick, the bringing them back. Quick vote. Pro or con? Pro or con?
of bringing these back?
Yeah.
Come
Oh,
on.
100%. You
What?
kidding?
No!
Why are you? I mean, like
We're
like,
gonna
in all-
die.
in all
They're gonna
honesty-
kill
Justin,
us.
Andrew,
They're
both had
predators.
Thumbs up. Bryce, thumbs down.
I said thumbs down. They're
In all honesty, these are things that will probably, at most, I would guess by our lifetime, is in private captivity of some Saudi prince or some Qatari, emir or something.
yeah, they'll just build an island for it and charge people admission to go on it. That'll work out
How-
great, Justin.
How far are we away from a tweet from Elon Musk? Help my son with the coolest science fair project ever. Check it out on Monday. Rawr.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I do think it will happen. I think we will see photos, but I do think that we're, in the near term at least, far closer to a Dolly the sheep kind of phenomenon than a, Bryce's horrifying vision of Thunderbirds stomping through I-10 in Austin.
They're not mutually exclusive. I
Well,
just
what is far different? Like, I mean, do you think that they're just gonna get out and start breeding? Like,
I think eventually they could, where like we get comfortable with them and we just like let them be. I don't know, man.
let them be what?
They're huge birds of prey. They're huge predator species. They exist to hunt and kill.
Yeah, but
Well, existed.
think of how good they might taste.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, dude. Imagine you're in Vegas and it's like, I mean, look, now the Kobe beef,
Mhm.
brought in from the right prefecture in Japan, one down on the special meat list because now the new hotness is you have to specify how many ounces at $3,000 an ounce you want that Thunderbird.
I will say I would approve of dinosaur cloning if it was for meat purposes.
So I had asked Jack Horner that once. We're then outside Montana, a little sandwich shop, and waiting in line. And I said, I'm going to ask you a question. I know it's probably maybe a dumb question, but I'm curious. I'm like, a T-Rex, what would it taste like? And this is one of the most foremost dinosaur experts in the world, and this is my contribution to science, is to me ask this dumb question.
Well, that's
you
a good
know?
question because would it taste more like a bird or more like a lizard?
Yeah. Well,
What
his
did he say?
response was, he said, well, bird-like. He said it might taste like, given what he maybe like turkey, maybe like turkey because of the muscle mass, maybe or a little bit like vulture because of what they ate, but he gave me a very thoughtful response to that. So,
Oh.
So somewhere between turkey and vulture.
as I remember it.
Yummy.
So,
Yeah, that's a good spectrum of meats between turkey and. Oh my goodness.
all right. We when do you want to do picks?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do picks? Anybody want to do a pick?
You guys go. Let me find a pick.
I've got a pick, and I don't know how I feel about it. Even though I've spent maybe 30 hours with it in the past week, I still don't know how I feel about it. And only because I think it's a thing that has evolved over time. In the 5 or 6 years that it's been out, it's evolved and become a different thing. But I've been trying to play it a little bit and spend some time in it and see what it is, because apparently it's a big thing and everybody's liking it. But I want to know what it is, because it's a phenomenon. It was already a phenomenon. It comes from a lineage of phenomenons.
The Holy Bible.
Yeah, it's the New Testament. No, it's the Grand Theft Auto online game. I've you know, it's sort of a culmination of a lot of things that you can tell that they've been trying to do with multiplayer in those games over the past, you know, however many decades now. But it's weird to see the decisions that they make for like a semi-open world online blow 'em up game, you know. But I think that they try to do some interesting things with like having heists, you know, when you set up these big scores and then at the end you and your crew go and you steal the vault or you free the guy from prison. But I think the way that they do some of the stuff is weird, and so I'm having evolving thoughts on it. But I think it's really interesting, and as an online game that is already free to play, only because it was bundled into the most popular video game ever, you have a bunch of people who have access to it and are trying to find their own ways to play in it. I don't know, man. I'm still 50-50 on it, but you might be able to find me playing Grand Theft Auto Online.
So the idea is this is World of Warcraft compared to Warcraft, right? Like the engine, but now,
But now
this is
multiple
always
people,
on. They're your friends, yeah.
And it's so weird because a lot of the decisions of it, like when you go into it, you load into just any lobby. Like you can have up to 30 people or something playing in the same city. And you just kind of free roam and do and blow stuff up. And especially when the game launched, there wasn't really too much to do in that. You would have to like load out of that and go into like a different lobby to find missions and jobs and stuff. And the fundamentals of that are kludgy. You know, if you are doing like this big story mission and somebody leaves because you failed, you have to go back out and find new people again. But it doesn't shoot you into that game lobby. It shoots you back into the city lobby. And like there's so many like kludgy things, and it's weird because I think it's really great. Like I think it's a great engine and it's perfect for a lot of the weird things that they do. Like they've got these hover cars.
We were talking about, I think it was on the Night Attack after show, that there's this whole almost like Second Life-y kind of like scene to the GTA Online world where people are like the value is in the long-term role play of like, I'm a judge. I'm a literal judge, and
I will adjudicate on these cases.
And I sit on the bench and I rule on the crime of this city. And it's like, that's a fun thing, but it has a little bit more rails than, let's say, what kind of fascinated people about Second City, or Second Life rather, not Second City, Second Life, where people were just like doing whatever they wanted, and it just kind of became
it's weird
mess.
Because like I'm sure a lot of that stuff still would have happened if Grand Theft Auto Online was not attached to Grand Theft Auto 5, these two distinct products. But yeah, you have these RP servers where people are really playing characters and getting into their roles, and you know, judging other. You know, I watch people and they're like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know how to RP. I'm gonna report him on our forums because he's not doing true RP or whatever." And like that is also fascinating, but also the exact opposite experience of like the intended gameplay, which is this online thing. And I'm fascinated by all of these things, and I think that's partially why I'm trying to get into the online game. But it's just a fascinating thing, especially if you compare it to other online MMO or MMO like games. It's nothing like it, and it's more of the Grand Theft Auto thing that people like, just like procedurally generated. It's a weird thing. I don't know too many people personally who play it, which is the other weird thing. It's this huge game, but I don't know any. I know a handful of people who still play it. So,
yeah. I have a hardware pick, and only because for whatever reason my friends in Florida on our group chat that we have all become fascinated by it. It's like talking to my friends in Florida is like talking to people in like Eastern Europe before the internet. Like everything that I was into 5 years ago, now all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, have you heard this cool thing?" And the thing that they're fascinated with now are Hue lights, which I have here in the studio. But they're cool.
Wait till they
they're
hear
expensive.
about Netflix streaming.
I know. They're expensive. So like you can get them on Amazon, a 4-pack for oh wow, I didn't realize. Oh, there's there's
so they have the
ones that
whites. They
yeah,
have
the ones that are just white
warms.
where you can dim them easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's ambiance and colors and stuff like that. But $199
my favorite
gets you
member of
ones,
Destiny's Child.
yeah, get you the ones that are crazy. But you can do all sorts of fun stuff with them, and we use them a lot here in the studio. Like
Yeah, I know you've set up like Twitch specific Twitch stuff for when people subscribe to you or what have you.
yeah, I mean, I don't do that, but this is what we use for. This is an app called OnSwitch where you can. This will be whenever on the politics podcast I do a segment called the Pole Dance where I read a political poll like a strip club DJ.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do stuff like that. But really, it's great for just kind of now that you have like Google Home and the Amazon Echo. You've got all these great ways that you can control stuff with your voice, and as it is smartly enabled, it's it just kind of that one step forward to some of these smart home fun that I think people wouldn't normally think they could have, but you could, because now that most people have these, a lot of people have these devices, these lights are a lot easier than they were when it was just poking into your app.
And the Hughes ones have been around probably the longest in terms of like the home automation brands, especially the larger ones that are really well known. It's one of the ones that are that have been there the longest, so there's a lot of support for it, whether it's Google Home or HomeKit or the through the Amazon Echo devices. Yeah, man, that's cool. We have a bunch of Hughes here in the studio. We don't have them set up to do any funky colors now, but we use them to add bits of color and to control everything. We got this little puck that lets you set, configurations and stuff.
But Hue lights,
cool.
My pick is I'm picking America.
Hey.
This 4th of July weekend, week, and then over the weekend, I went to a conference. I was at WesterCon 71. I was a guest of honor there. A friend of mine asked me to do it like 2 years ago. Forgot about it, then realized I got to do this thing. And I decided I'd drive. I would drive. So, I'd go for a road trip. So I had a buddy come with me, Jonathan, who was on our podcast a couple episodes ago.
Oh, yeah.
Jonathan was starting his job we can't talk about, and it said, hey, let's go we'll leave LA in the morning, we'll get into Denver at night, 1,000-mile drive in one day, why not? So we drove through and saw, man, it was amazing, because I've always wanted to see more of the West, more of that part, Utah, Nevada past Las Vegas, that area. I always wanted to do that. I did a trip once from Boulder to Montana, and that was amazing, driving through Wyoming. Like, I remember when I did that, I went to a tiny con there. I drove through Wyoming past zero cars.
Whoa.
All the way through to Wyoming, right? But anyhow, here, with more cars here. But it was awesome stopping at all these sort of little lookouts and things like this and seeing such amazing things, mesas, rock formations. You're like, this is where Westworld is supposed to look like. It was just incredible. I'm really glad I did it, spent one day driving 1,000 miles and seeing what we could see, and got there and had fun at the con, and then drove back and saw things from a different direction. It was an absolutely amazing experience. So America is my pick. Go see it.
Yeah.
It's always great when you get to kind of get out of the city or get out of where you normally live and just take a look at like what else is out there. I went out hiking a month or so ago, and drove like 3 hours out of town to go to some national park or state wildlife area, and you just see all the terrain and all the mountains and the hills, and it's great. There's a lot of beauty out there.
Yeah, so it was a very fun trip, and you see names and sometimes see locations of places you've heard before, and you're like Green River. I'm like, well, no, there's a Green River serial killer, but also fun fact about Green River. The
Is it
town
great?
becomes the new home of the Mouskowitz family in an American tale, Fievel Goes West.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so you see
That-
things like
the-
that, and then you look there. It's like this big, huge, like rock formation mesas around there. It's just, it was gorgeous. It was really awesome. So that was my pick.
That's great.
America.
America. Love it
go.
or leave it. Well,
5-0 Goes West, the final performance of Jimmy Stewart as Wyatt Burp.
Oh, wow.
Wyatt Burp.
Well, there you go. Between that and Orson Welles and Transformers the movie,
Yep.
it's the way. Hey, do you want to go do a voiceover? No, it'll kill me.
Yeah. Yeah, it won't kill you. Don't worry.
Yep.
You're
Gentlemen, it's
Wyatt
been weird.
Burp.
Oh, wait. It's been weird.
That's great.
All right, real quick. Here's the bath.
Sure.
All right, me too.
All right, go use the bathroom. Hey, everybody. I'm not going to use the bathroom. I'm going to turn some music on. By the way, if you do play Grand Theft Auto Online, I think I'm Neshcom on Rockstar Social Club. You should follow me, and we can do missions together. I didn't want to get too much into the details of GTA Online because I'm like every day or every other day I'm finding like a new type of thing you can do in that game, and like finding more ways to enjoy it. But I'm certainly not like at a definitive place with it. I've kind of gotten into the vehicle stealing. There's like a vehicle warehouse import export sort of thing you can do, which is its own interesting thing. I don't know. I'm gonna take a look at some show titles and pick one. Number one killing machine. I'm gonna do number one killing machine.
Number one, Killing Machine.
How you doing, Justin? How was your weekend?
Pretty good. Had a bunch of people in town.
Yeah.
Wrestling intensive. Went to the Hood Slam show with a bunch of first timers, which was very fun.
Mhm.
And then did New Japan Pro Wrestling. Came out and ran a show at the historic Cow Palace,
Cow Palace.
which is it's a stadium out or an arena out here in San Francisco that is as like if you were to build a nostalgia themed kind of arena,
Mhm.
like it would be the Cow Palace. It is kind of aged perfectly into nostalgia in that it looks almost untouched from the 70s and has a lot of, in fact, probably even before that. No, I think it was like initially conceived pre-Eisenhower, but I think came to prominence in the 70s and 80s as a music venue and a sports venue. But
Oh wow.
yeah, it's now primarily is kind of used as, I think they still do like some rodeos and livestock stuff.
Is that the shuttle?
That's the shuttle, dude.
Wow.
What was a popular place for the Grateful Dead, and I think the Beatles played there, the Rolling Stones played there. Pretty fantastic venue. So I got to go see a wrestling show there, which a wrestling show of that size had not been run there in many, 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 many years. So super fun time.
Very cool.
There's something neat about like we focus so much on having driven across America and really think that I've got my
Yeah.
my finger on the pulse of the real America.
Andrew,
Real-
road
not
trip
you
Maine.
coastal elites, Bryce. There is something when you start to go through some places and you see like state fairgrounds and it's humongous and you realize like, oh yeah, like out here like there was a time when you didn't have a big city all the time. You had once a year or something. Everything came here, and then you hear about things like the Calgary Stampede or these other events that are like, and going back, what's one of the oldest songs? I mean, the oldest stories in literature You know, it's about going to the fair. You know, it's going to, you know, this, let's go to this big event that periodically happens. The oldest city that we're aware of with carved structures, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, may have been, this is the thing, it could be between 10 and 20,000 years old. You know, and this is what we think maybe pre-agriculture may have existed because everybody in that part of Europe, which was a very different climate back then, by the way, it's like, yeah, maybe once a year, you know, the spring or when it gets warm, we're all going to go gather and thousands of people may show up and trade or whatever. And so in the Midwest, you go through this and you see these things like there's the cow palace, there's like the corn. Is there like a corn palace or something like that too, or something? Or
I'm gonna look up corn.
Yeah,
palace.
I don't. I'm not
safe
aware. I did
search on.
do a little bit of research and found that the Cow Palace got its name from. Oh yeah, no, look at that. The Corn Palace.
Mitchell Corn Palace, South Dakota.
yeah, I think that's more of a.
As a tourist destination.
Yeah.
Cow Palace
is that
got
shit
its
made out of
name.
corn?
So in the late 19th century, a number of cities on the Great Plains constructed crop palaces, also known as grain palaces, to promote themselves and their products. And so, including the Corn Palace in Sioux City, Iowa, that was active from 1887 to 1891, a Corn Palace in South Dakota, a Grain Palace, and a Bluegrass Palace. So,
Yeah, the Cow Palace got its name because of a angry column that was criticizing its construction because the city had so many problems and yet we're building a palace for cows. And that apparently became so synonymous with the building they eventually renamed it
The Cow
the
Palace.
Cow Palace.
Oh, that's great.
that's funny. What city has the big giant dome they built?
Like a sports stadium or
There are lots of domes.
No, it wasn't sports. Like some sort of, forget, like, I gotta look this, like Dome City or
Oh, the
Pyramid, the giant pyramid or whatever. Hold on.
there. Winooski, Vermont was almost a dome city. Giant dome at Carlsbad.
Something. Anyhow, I digress.
Memphis?
Yeah, maybe that sounds.
Memphis. 3D giant dome. AutoZone dome at the Sharp Planetarium. I think these are just domes. The Memphis Pyramid.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Originally the Great American Pyramid. Oh yeah, I've seen this because this is a big Bass Pro Shop now.
really?
Yeah, has not been used regularly as sports or entertainment venue since 2004. 2015, the Pyramid reopened as a Bass Pro Shops and megastore, including shopping, a hotel, restaurants, bowling alley, and archery range.
Oh my
10th
god.
tallest pyramid in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In your face,
Blah.
Egypt.
Yeah, I pulled that up in the Bass Pro. I'm like, oh, that's not it. They're like, no, they bought it and did that.
Yeah.
You know,
That's,
there is something about crazy weird architecture being retrofitted for something else. Like CNN used to be the Sid and Marty Crofts theme park
Yeah.
at the Omega Center. You know, or the Omni rather. So anyhow, okay, we right. Justin, you said you had something for this one.
I do. Yeah. I got something I want to run by you guys.
okay.
Sweet.
Oh wait,
You ready?
let me hold on. I gotta hit the button. Hey, there we go. All right, ready. Take it away in 3, 2.
Welcome to After Things. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Bryce Castillo,
Hi everybody, welcome to After Things.
Justin Robert Young.
Hi.
Brian Brushwood is out finishing the acquisition of his compound.
Mm-hmm. I believe he's putting pen to paper now as we speak.
Yes, but it's one of his scam school shocking pens. So
Yeah, got him.
it's a lockpick.
Yeah.
Hold on, I got something here.
That's the trick. That's how you make signings go faster. Is you just shock them until
Yeah.
they want to get away from you. Just take it. Just take the property.
Let's do it. Fine, it's fine. Justin, you said you had a topic, a suggestion, a comment, observation, manifesto.
I'm at a crossroads. So I have a problem, and I'm gonna bring it to you guys, and I do have a solution.
I think the beard looks good. I know it's starting to be kind of silly and hipsterish. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun on that.
No, it is getting a little wizardly. This is Ashley's way of telling me to trim the beard, is that she just starts saying that the beard is wizardly.
Potion seller?
I know, like she's like, "What? I don't see a Ren Fair on the calendar. What's the deal?"
Exactly, right? All right. So when I was thinking about leaving the Go game, I created a Patreon for the one mic show that I was doing called Jury. Jury started out as me wanting to get better at one mic radio and one mic podcasting. I knew to do it, I would have to do it more, right? And so I had done the Jury podcast for a little bit, but I decided, you know, if I'm going to have all this extra time, if I'm taking myself off the road, then let's just take a gauge on what a Jury Patreon would make me, and then kind of go from there. And so when I quit the Go game, that was the place where I wanted to direct all that excitement, you know, of like, hey, more of me on the internet, hooray. So as things kind of went on, I then also started doing the politics podcast, which I had initially only thought was going to last until the end of the 2016 election. Turns out people still wanted to talk about politics after the 2016 election, so I continued to do that. And as I sort of threw the politics podcast in as sort of like yet another value add on, you know, subscribing to me, it became a little clearer by all available metrics that there were more people interested in me talking politics than me just doing a general one-man show.
Yeah.
And by and large, I don't think this has necessarily been a huge conflict, except for two things. Number one, the biggest spike we have ever had on that Patreon came when I started doing exclusive political content on Mondays and Fridays. So now if you're a $3 subscriber per week, then you get a Monday show and a Friday show that people who are not a $3 subscriber do not get, right? It's been a huge value add, and it's like rewarded the people that are the most passionate about the show, which is great. That relies on the RSS feed that Patreon generates. Right now, Patreon does not have a way for you to select of the things that are specifically given to you on that RSS feed what you do or don't want. You just get the highest level that you're pledged at, and then everything else. So that's the technical thing that becomes a problem now that I've decided with the Jury show as a way of just evolving that and finding where that audience really, really wants to be. I've decided to no longer do a 1 hour weekly show, but rather 15 to 20 minute shows 4 days a week, because it has kind of become a more email dependent show. And we've had some really fun, interesting emails that, like, if we go with the normal flow of it, it's 3 months that we're talking about something that's like fascinating, but I don't really want to be talking about for 3 months. On a 4 day a week thing, we can have these things sort of cycle through more and more.
Yeah.
Here's my problem. For the people that, by the numbers, just care about me talking about politics and have cared so much that they have given me $3 a week to listen to my exclusive talk, that RSS feed right now is also getting them not one episode of this podcast they don't listen to, but 4 episodes of this podcast that they don't listen to. And it is becoming very, very clear that one Patreon is kind of bursting at the seams for this increasingly divergent content.
Right. You've made a second show that is a different show and has grown into needing its own space and mechanism because those audiences are diverging because the shows are very different.
Yeah.
Okay.
And branding wise, it's kind of it's getting harder and harder to be like, well, go to this thing that doesn't sound like this other thing, and it's become a problem. And I've not yet gotten the first complaint from somebody who's like, I'm just here for the politics. Why am I getting this multitude of other stuff that I don't want?
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect that it is my spidey sense is tingling that I am making the mechanism by which the most passionate people are giving me money less useful to them. And so that's the problem.
Yeah.
I do have a solution, but I would love to open up the floor to you guys for any clarifying questions or any thoughts on how I could handle this going forward.
I'm gonna
Go ahead,
let me get this clear. So
Yeah.
you did a show, politics, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were doing it how often?
For free once a week on Fridays, and
Mhm.
for $3 subscribers, the only way that they can get those episodes is to get the custom RSS feed. I do Mondays and Fridays.
Okay. And then now you've added more shows.
He's added more
So-
jury shows.
Jury shows.
Yeah. The jury show, which is the other one mic show that I do,
Yeah.
that has gone from once a week to now 4 times a week.
Okay. And I know most of this. We've talked about this for years, but I want to kind of get clarity here because there's a lot of
Sure.
insidery stuff here. So,
Yeah.
jury show is separate Patreon, or is it part of the whole thing?
It's one as of now, it's one
Okay.
All in
Patreon.
one.
Right. So you're getting jury and you're getting politics all in one feed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. I would say ultimately the arbitrators, of course, are going to be your fans. Okay. And I just want to make absolutely clear that this is what this, because I've listened to these and talked about these things. I think I support them, by the way.
Yes.
Support it, by the way. It's part of my Patreon bill. I think that ultimately is what your audience, but of course the audience is not a unimind. There's going to be difference of opinions, and that's the thing. You say, I haven't got an email yet. Well, so what if you did? If 99% of people are happy and one guy's not, it's not your responsibility to change everything because one guy. I think regardless, and to really make a point, irregardless, because it's not a word, but it is now, you should be doing 2 separate Patreons. And I think you're at the point where I know that there's the pro and con to that, but I do think you should be thinking about doing 2 separate ones. I think it should be 2 separate ones because some people are like, I'm here for jury, I'm here for politics, I'm here for both. And you're going to see a disruption. You're going to see some people like, no, I liked it all. Some people, no, whatever. But there might, I think that it's a growth point. The growth point now is like, you want to be another, you are a multi-Patreon podcaster as it is right now. I think it's time to split it into a separate thing. And that's something like that might even be something we should think about, weird things and after things, because it might be that, these things might thrive better in their own, worlds, but anyhow, for that, I think my votes, split them, make content free for a while, tell people like, hey, listen, it's free. I want to ease this transition, whatever. You're very good at that, being extremely sympathetic to your audience, but I say split.
I look at the Patreons that I'm involved in and everyone else's. And, one thing with the Cord Killers Patreon, because as a part of that, we have a sister show, it's Spoiler in Time, which is a different show, but it's still it's still very closely tied to Cord Killers. And so, early on, or at least, a few years ago, we would get a lot of people who would be like, well, I like Cord Killers, but I don't like Spoiler in Time, or I don't listen to Spoiler in Time, and so I would like to not support Spoiler in Time. Is there a way I can dedicate my money to the one but not the other? And the thing about I think what people have come to understand about that is that those 2 shows are inherently tied. We record them at the same time. They come out at
the same
about
talent.
the same time.
It's the same people that are doing the one thing are doing the other.
Right. And so I think people have gotten used to that and understand that is a bonus add-on degree to Cord Killers. And I would probably say maybe a similar thing to After Things. So I think After Things is conceptually very different. Though I don't exactly know. That would be an interesting thing to talk about. But the other thing I think about, and this was, I mean, I don't even remember how many years ago this was, but back when everybody was on doing when a lot of people were on Twit still, and YouTube was still sort of burgeoning. Everything was going onto the Twit YouTube channel. And that would be the big shows, the little shows, everything just kind of was in this one big channel. And the tough thing about it, especially at the time where the algorithm sorting stuff didn't really understand what different episodes were and how to show stuff right, at the time, that was kind of an annoying thing to follow, because I was like, oh, well, I like watching NSFW, and maybe sometimes I'll watch, Tech News Today, but I don't care about home theater.
Not into This Week in Computer Hardware, and I'm not into Linux, and I'm not into Security Now necessarily. And that's not to say that any of these are good or bad. It's just that that's internet.
That's not my interest, right?
Yeah,
and so,
the internet's all about getting exactly what you want.
Right. Well, and so I understand the value of like having everything on one channel, as a means to like bolster another thing. We did that with the Modern Rogue, where we had Modern Rogue on the Scam School channel for a while. And then after a while, it grew into its own thing and it moved to its own channel. And Twit did a very similar thing where all of those shows sort of got their own channels and were essentially democratized the organization of those shows, right? You suddenly had a bunch of channels that updated about once a week.
There's advantages, like as Bryce says, for point of discovery. But part of the value, I think, of Patreon is kind of like, I have an audience. Now I need to tailor the products to them. Matuba in the chat makes some points that, that the outsiders you could potentially gain for politics is higher if it is separate. And that's often the case where sometimes we look at the whole thing and we don't realize if we took this one part out of it, enormous. If you took Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services, out of Amazon and it was a separate company, it could be a Google rival by itself for getting the part about Amazon that delivers products and does Prime. Tesla is an example. Like I'm coming back to that. Like I've vested a lot in Tesla because I'm like, forget the cars. They're now becoming the largest battery manufacturer. And you look at what they're dealing with, these power packs they've been building, like gigawatt entire infrastructures to supply power for municipalities. They're doing amazing things there that get pushed down below the fold because Model 3, they only delivered 4,500 this week instead of 46, or what. It's like, oh, yeah, that's important, but it's like the bigger story is here. And so politics, like that's separate brand.
Yeah.
I think
you're good at brands, Justin. You're good at creating different brands,
and you've incubated it well enough. But like I look at the Patreon for Jury, and the politics stuff is kind of in here in the copy, but it sort of muddles the point when you have two very different shows on the same thing. I think you have built it up, and I can see the downsides or the things that might be discouraging. The idea of splitting and suddenly you have two possibly smaller Patreons.
So here's I'm glad you guys have agreed, because the solution that I've come up with after thinking about this long and hard and asking a few questions to Patreon itself is to split things up. And I'm going to keep this is the plan now, right? So I'm opening this up to everybody. If you guys have any thoughts, please hit me up at Justin R. Young or Justin Robert Young at gmail.com. If I do it, I would keep the current Patreon as the politics one.
Oh, and split Jury out into a new one?
I would split Jury into its own thing.
Wow. So
the majority of the people that are at the level that are supporting it at the level that I want, they're there for the politics.
Yeah.
Not there for the Jury.
Wow.
So that would be the idea.
Okay.
The problems are this. Number one, anytime that you are messing with anything that is making you money, and this is not, we're doing well enough to live a fun life, but listen, the second one of these things goes wrong,
You could mess everything up forever.
yeah. The other side is that, there is this idea of, is there a value in the big, just come on in? I mean, like, am I looking at it the wrong way that I should be looking at it as like Amazon Prime, and that I should be constantly adding new and greater value to one thing, and I should be rebranding it as the Justin One Mic extravaganza, and there's something for everybody, so everybody needs to get in on it.
Well, as pointed out in here, OpenBio mentions that he doesn't like mega feeds, and that's the problem. Is the Amazon thing is I get access, but it's not like Amazon Prime. When I open it up, it feeds every show through me,
Yeah.
And so if Patreon worked differently, if there was a way to say, hey, subscribe here, click and choose which feeds you want, which, hey, business model, hint, hint, that would be cool. But that's not the world we live in. And I know there's a lot of people there are people I've got to subscribe to this. Understood. But what's the best for your show and you in the long term? Probably this way.
And I think that there are technical things that you could do that would not be as airtight as the solution Patreon gives you, of giving people access to more granular private feeds. It would not be pretty, and it would be way more susceptible to abuse. But I think that the other very plausible road is that the Patreon/jury page becomes a landing page for all of the Justin shows. I think there's a world where that could be a thing, but I also think that 2 shows is not I think you would have to grow into that solution where splitting them becomes a different thing.
The other problem is we are inherently looking at this, or I am inherently looking at this, and I think that the people that are listening right now are inherently looking at this from the perspective of a fan of mine that's come through a lot of this stuff, and it's almost like they look at it like I do, and I have to kind of try to reframe my thinking, because I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I was doing jury and then I started doing the politics thing, but the more I try to look at it in, I think, a smarter way, I'm like, well, yeah, but politics is a very defined genre. You know all the players, right? Like, the way that people become big in politics is by having very specific come here for politics brands, right? Be they Twitter or blogs or podcasts or radio shows. This is what we do.
And that's not the message with politics, because it's intermixed.
Its own thing. If people want to support, and this is how everything gets paid, then you want to do that. Now, the other side is, and this is what Open Bayou is like, hey, look, in general, I there are some times where you just have to have Patreons for everything, because, like, we need a separate Patreon for Weird Things than we do for Night Attack, because Andrew's involved in Weird Things. Brian and I are involved in Night Attack. And even though Brian and I are both also involved in Weird Things, just whenever there's money and you're trying to split it, it's just better for everybody if it's all coming out of another bucket, right? Like, it's just better.
Siloing it so that you have a better understanding of what compartments have what distribution. Yeah.
And same thing with Unfriend Me. Like, by and large, and 1-900 Wrestling, unlike Politics became its own Patreon because
it's you and Dills.
It's me and Dills, right? Yeah. So I understand that there is the idea of, another Patreon. I got to support another Patreon. Now I got to think about whether or not I'm going to decline, or I'm going to take money away from another one, and I'll figure that out. I'm very sensitive to that as well. At the same time, it's like, at right now, I think I'm maxed out on what I feel comfortable putting out on what I am positioning as my luxury RSS feed. Like, right now, if you become enamored with my point of view and need to hear my political hot takes, and you download, you get this RSS feed, it comes with a lot of what might seem to you to be adware, right? Like just a lot of cruft, a lot of programs that you don't need right now.
Sure. I'm scrolling through the list. So we got Jury most recently, then a Politics.
Those are both today.
Friday Hype Train, which is like a separate thing from those two.
That
even
would go with Jury, theoretically.
Politics, Jury, Politics, Jury, Politics. So it's relatively even in this very short sampling, but it's still two very different shows.
Yeah, and right now, by the numbers, it would be 5 things in the jury world and 3 things from the political world, and yet the majority of the people that are patrons are politics people. Or at least that was the biggest spike that we have gotten. We almost doubled the Patreon when we offered exclusive content.
I think if there's a way to... I think if you're able to position this in a way where, not only is it better organized and better for both of these brands, but it also allows you to do more granular sorts of content, right? Like if, say, you have a political thing and some breaking political thing happens, you could, not even on the live stream, you could just record something and throw it on the Patreon, and then that's going out to the people who want politics and not interrupting the people who want jury stuff. Or if you get an email and you want to just post the text of an email, a special email, or write a thing, like you are creating 2 roads, like you already have 2 roads, but now they are able to function they're able to function discreetly and with purpose.
I mean, look, I feel like we are just now to the point where I would expect somebody who doesn't really know about this to understand the problem, which kind of underscores to me that it's already too complicated, like for people to understand.
Yeah.
And that's not what you necessarily want if you're trying to bring in outsiders.
Well, and I think, because
every moment that you don't understand how to support something or what you're getting for it, I think is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough, but I hearing you talk about it, I can tell very clearly that this will be better for both of these brands to be separate and to have that distinct purpose for each of those things, so that the politics, if you attract a random politics listener from iTunes, that they go to the site and they know it's a politics thing and not a completely different show.
Yeah, or not to mention that, Patreon is okay at recommending other things, right? Yeah. But if somebody randomly finds me, how do they know? Right.
You would not get from this, the tagline that you've got at top, which is most of what they will show to people.
Yeah.
That this is that there is a political angle to this.
Yeah.
I think it's tough, but I also know that our community can be very understanding and can, there's nothing salacious about this. This is just, hey,
and everything free would still be free.
Yeah.
There's no, right now the jury thing would just be a way for people to support it and also for it to be able to grow. And that's the thing. It's right now I made the call to break it up into 4 episodes, and that's pretty much it. There's really no more that I can grow it on that feed without even further kind of complicating it. So, it's scary, and I think there will be more. I've had a couple kind of public discussions about it on the stream. I'm very sympathetic to Open Bayou's fear that there's a threshold to how many Patreons people want to support, and this might be falling outside of it. But at the same time, I do think that in the moment, those fears are always more than historically they are. From somebody who thought Kevin Smith waited too long to get into podcasting. Too bad. I'm sure he could have had a successful podcast had he had done started Smodcast from before everything had gotten too saturated. And now he's moving into like 10 years of Smodcast, and podcasts, I think, are in a richer, larger place than they have ever been before. I think similarly with Patreon, there's just more and more people that want to move into this kind of model. There's more and more people that want to support this kind of way, that while there might be people in our crowd that it's like, well, sorry, I can only support one, or I got to drop my Jury Patreon because I really like the politics thing. I'm just going to leave it on the politics thing. Then that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's always tough when you're putting a group of people in a situation where at least one of them will have to say, but you're going to make me have to decide. And it's always very tough to say, I need you to just decide, because it's better for the shows. And either way you're supporting, but I need you to tick a box, and I don't need you to tick all of them, but just like, you may have to make a decision, and we're at the point where people will have to make decisions.
There is no one answer that will make everybody who loves you happy. You have to figure out, and there's also the thing to think that the best thing, 1, for you, 2, for them, and 3, for the future Jury fan. That is the thing too, is that in an ideal world, there's the people who've been with you this far, but then there's also going to be the people who hopefully will discover and find you and want to support you, which I think this helps your discovery, because now it's like, because it's this politics thing and not all this other nonsense, and you have no lack of empathy for your fans. So I think you'll be fine.
That is the one thing that also with the Jury thing, I really feel like it deserves its own kind of branding, because daily podcast listeners are different than weekly podcast listeners. Like, I've watched enough of them, and I've met enough of them to know that, not to say that it's a 1-to-1, but it's like, there are people that they have commutes, they've got specific things where like they just want a daily show for which they can enjoy, and I want to be able to cater to them specifically in a way that I can't for a weekly, a weekly show with custom content.
Yeah. And Open Bayou, Open Bayou is kind of going on to what we were talking about with subscription fatigue, but we're not going to solve subscription fatigue if you keep these in the same fee, in the same campaign.
And part of the problem with subscription fatigue is some things should not be subscriptions. Like you mentioned clothing and stuff, like, oh, every month I'm going to get this, or clothing thing. It's like, those are business models that they say there will be people who go like, oh, I want to have this problem solved. But you look at the efficiency there. They're not creating an efficiency for you. They're hoping on the inefficiency of you buying more clothes, or them having the regular basis getting more. And that's the thing too, is you got to think closely about some of these models of like, I buy Microsoft Word. I don't subscribe to Microsoft Online. I'll buy the model, whatever version I can, because I only use it when my editors send me a manuscript of Word back. For me to subscribe to Word every single month to go do that is dumb, like, to not dumb for somebody to do it, but I mean, I just don't like that model. Photoshop, I do. I'm happy at the Photoshop model, because Microsoft Word has not gotten better for me in the last 20 years. There's not an improvement they've added to it where I said, this has made my life easier.
Right.
Photoshop, I go, man, yeah, this year, this version's better than last year, better than that, and that's where I get subscription fatigue, but the beauty of it does sort of, for some services, entertainment kind of makes sense. But having to subscribe, like this Patreon over here, or these guys, and then you get that big bill and you're like, I don't listen to that show.
And like, democratizing these brands in this way is the goal of some of these subscriptions, of not needing to buy into a bundle of something you may not like.
Yeah, that's the advantage, is that, by picking and choosing, you're not paying, $100 a month for podcast cable.
Right.
All right, one last question. This is one of those dirt under the fingernails, like the real work that you have to think about in these kinds of businesses, kind of stuff that I love to talk about on After Things.
Okay.
So one thing is, if I'm going to keep the Patreon for politics and not for Jury, is that the Patreon account is still patreon.com/Jury. Now, I can change that name and start the other one. I can then retake that name with a new account, right? But when I change that URL, I will need everybody who uses those custom RSS feeds that I have been touting as the super easy, no muss, no fuss, forever RSS feeds. They will have to delete and re-enter a new RSS feed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is a great This is a great poll for your audience.
Yeah.
Because then you can point to, you guys decided this. Don't blame me.
We kind of had this hurdle when we launched the Modern Rogue YouTube channel, where we had to say, hey, you've been enjoying it exclusively on the Scam School channel. If you like it, we need you to press a button so that you can keep enjoying it. And I think, you know, if there's a transition period where, you know, maybe the politics ones are still, or I don't know, I think there can be a transition period where you are preempting these things like, hey, just heads up, you're going to have to change your RSS link if you haven't already so that you get the different thing. No, they would have to do it immediately.
I don't know once I switch if
Oh.
I can communicate with them.
Oh, right. Well, you'll still be able to get in touch with them via email. Patreon still sends out
Yes,
emails.
I can, yeah, but not in the RSS feed. So I would have to, it would have to be like, all right, we're setting up, like in a week if you're hearing this, and then have one dedicated like sirens blaring,
Yeah.
you know, a Drudge Report GIF, siren. You gotta change.
You've got to make a day and just say,
Now,
hey,
the other thing
on this
is
day,
that I can handhold this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the number of $3 patrons it's not massive, right? We're talking in the 100+ range, right?
Mhm.
So I can probably even just go door to door and literally be like asking everybody if they have accepted Christ as their savior and updated their RSS feed to make sure that this happens. So it is something that that it's not crazy for me to get my hands dirty and beat the pavement a little bit.
Yeah, this is just gonna come out of proper communication and execution.
Yeah.
and just letting people, hey, like, we are all going to have to rip the Band-Aid off a little bit. Please just click the link, delete the old feed, put in the new feed, give it some time to repopulate.
Yeah. And maybe I can do a special episode or something to like entice people to.
Yeah.
Maybe I can put a little tasty bit of content on the other side. Be like, hey, you gotta
everybody,
change it.
There's a train. Do you hear the whistle? Woo woo! You all gotta get on board the train. You know.
This
That'd be
episode
kind
brought
of a
to you
great metaphor,
by
like, through the
changing
show.
your RSS feed.
But there we go. That is the thought. I think I've kind of made my mind up on it each time that I've had this conversation with folks online. It has kind of gone through a fairly replicated no to, oh, is that what you're trying to fix? To, well, then why don't you just have 2 patrons? And I'm like, okay, cool. We got where I wanted to go, which is good. So
Yeah, it just means that you have to tell the exact same story to all of the people who already love you.
yeah. So yeah, that's the thought. But thank you guys for helping me talk through it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear. I'm excited for it. I'm glad, because it's always a thing that it's been in the corner of my eyes. Like, oh, he might have to make.
At some point, I'm gonna have to make a new video, and I got to redo my goals, and like, because like one of the goals is like at $2,000 a week, I do a daily show, and now I'm just doing a daily show at 1,100. So it's like there's a lot that just needed a new coat of paint, and this is going to be, I think, this is going to be fairly key.
Yeah.
And believe you me, man, I would love to be able to bundle like a Twitch sub and all this into one thing, or people would be able to get it. There's a lot of fragmentation that, God, I hope we don't have to deal with in 10 years. But
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe we'll all be dead.
Maybe,
I like that you're like, maybe the best solution is we're all.
I mean, listen, yeah, this is a very complicated. Listen, I'm trying to one up subscription fatigue. It's like, listen, we could either have angst about how many subscriptions we have, or we could all die.
drop dead.
We've gone from wishing that we had a recession,
Yeah,
to show our frustration, to, like, what if we just all die?
yeah. What if we just died? Hey, do we want to do picks?
Yep.
Yeah.
I got a great one.
Oh, go for it, Andrew.
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
You go.
All of this talk about radio, podcasting, media, consolidation, all this reminded me of one of the most interesting books about the business that helped me understand a lot more about like particular radio was Howard Stern's Private Parts. Remember that? 25 years ago, about Howard Stern discussing his rise in radio, and Howard Stern became one of the top broadcasters there is. And so this is a story. There's the movie, but the book, that's what I was referencing. The book goes into the ins and outs. How did he go from some guy in the middle of nowhere to all of a sudden building a big audience? And I think a lot of it applies to podcasting today. You look at the rise of Joe Rogan. You look at some of these people some people who made these, were really well known in radio and made a jump to podcasting, or some people who we know through podcasting and what worked there. And a lot of the same things work as you do these minor markets, you build up your audience, you scale up, maybe you're on a bigger platform. Once you reach a point where you're able to have your own platform, there was a whole reason why Howard Stern was paid enormous sums of money to go to Sirius XM. That was because this is your, I guess it was Sirius he went to before they merged?
Yeah.
Was it,
Sirius,
what's that?
Sirius, yeah.
Yeah. Was because here's this nascent satellite network that's like, we need content. Well, if we get this guy here and the only place people can get him, he's going to lose a big part of his audience, but we'll compensate for him. We're going to have millions of subscribers now to our network, and then we can entice them with our other packages and stuff. That was the power of Howard Stern. The power of Howard Stern was this guy could launch an entirely new form of content. And so Private Parts is sort of, I think, a really neat, example of the rise of that.
Very cool.
Yeah, no, fascinating book, great movie, and it blows my mind to this day how much influence Howard Stern has, and he does 2 shows a week, if that sometimes. He is a fairly infrequent guy, but I mean, such a career that he has had. It's worth it for fans of his to just have his best ofs from years and years and years play ad infinitum and listen to all these great celebrity interviews that he has done throughout the years. And then before all the in-studio hijinks.
Wow.
Anybody else?
I got to pick. There's a mobile game that is very dangerous, but it's because it's very
Called
fun.
Drive and Play.
It's called The Battle of Polytopia. Have you guys heard of this?
Mm-mm.
It is basically a single player version of Civilization, but it's very fast. So you kind of start off with these units, and you found a town on this very tiny map, and you only have 30 turns to conquer as much of the map as you can and build up your cities and gain points. It's very it's not so addicting where I gotta play it, but it's when I do play it, I just can't help but think man, this is really smart and a very interesting way to take Civilization, which is a very long turn-based strategy game that can go on and on and on, into something very small and easy to control with your finger, and you can make it short but still have some depth in you have these different civilizations, and so they have different tech trees, and you're building up your cities, and It's a very neat thing. I really think you should at least try it, and also it's free. So
Nice.
The Battle of Polytopia, and it's on iOS and Android.
I totally apropos of nothing. The wrestling show that I went to over the weekend, the Japanese one, was sponsored by a Japanese rhythm mobile game called Bang Dream Girl Band, which I thought was one of those just, man.
Huh.
I don't know if that really is understood, if that really makes the translation, but Bang Dream Girls Band Party. That's it.
Okay. Huh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I've seen this. This is a new one. I think I saw this on the up and coming or pre-release things on iOS.
It's the kind of thing that gets in Japan, I just think it means something, but in American fart sniffing wrestling fans, it's just like
yeah, that's the thing is
Dream Bang Girls.
If you have some of the bands,
I'm sure if you explain it to them, they'd totally change it.
Poppin' Party and
I guess that is probably a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. So is that your pick? Bang Dream Girls Band Party?
My pick is a book I read about the Rat Pack over the weekend. Finally finished it. Let me see if I can find
so I'm looking at this game. So it's a rhythm game of over 40 songs, including cover songs from famous anime. I mean, the culture eats itself.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
All right. Rat Pack Confidential. Frank, Dean, Sammy, Peter, Joey, and the Last Great Showbiz Party. I think this is the one that I got. It might not be, actually.
From Sean Levy?
This might be the good one. There's another one that Anyway, that one's good, too. But doing a bunch of Rat Pack reading for this 1960 podcast. And, man, I'll tell you what. Talk about a fascinating story of watching, the Frank Sinatra's career specifically, starts out as this matinee idol in this kind of big band swing era, really has his career die in front of him because as the war's going on, he's not going to war. And so it becomes this cultural shift. He is looked at as the decay of the youth, that all these girls want to do is scream and kiss this singer boy, and he's not even going off to war like their brothers and husbands really are, yada yada yada. Then has a comeback, becomes an actor, and then kind of becomes the thing that almost killed his career as he watches everything sort of move into this post 1960 free love, drug culture becomes a thing. The sound becomes something radically different. And yet on the other end of it, for, certainly hippie culture is something that kind of never went away, specifically in this neck of the woods, but it's less the nadir of cool in a way that the Rat Pack kind of has consistently been. No matter what, it might be less than, but there is the let's get dressed up in suits and have a cool swinging night. That is a thing that even in Vegas is still hardwired into the you want to have a fun night kind of culture. That's kind of crazy that when you think of it, Frank Sinatra, you wonder whether or not in 50 years from now, if Frank Sinatra and Elvis, who Elvis was kind of endemic of the next great musical wave, who will be continued to be remembered, right? Who will be thought of as more cool?
Well, in Blade Runner 2049, the answer is both.
Exactly, right? That it's there's modern art that is looking at that as oh, look, this is still this time capsule period that we look back on fondly, even as we've had successive kind of decades. So fascinating career. Book's pretty good. It has this weird, the author does this weird thing where they really, really, really want to keep talking about how good or bad the movies he and the rest of the Rat Pack did. So they'll like the movie, like the filmography is kind of this like anchor point, and will like the author will just savage some of these movies, and it's like, okay, cool. I would have been okay with it was bad, but we don't necessarily need to break down the problems of this old era of film. You know, I don't think if I was reading a biography of my favorite actor or an actor that I really like, that we would need to go through every clunker they did and explain it was bad because the secondary characters were bad and the script had problems in the third act. It's like,
okay. But like film has changed so much in the 70 years since then.
Well, and that's there's a fascinating thing in there where he talks about how much Sinatra hated Brando. And one of the things that he hated the most about Brando was he really wanted that role. Sinatra wanted the on the waterfront role. That's the, I could have been a contender, like that that role, because Brando at that point was one of the first big kind of he changed acting. He changed what, somebody walking into a role could be. And Sinatra was from an older school where he's like, no, Brando's the soft actor. I'm a hard hoodlum. If there's the hard hoodlum role, I should be the one who's getting it because that's what people pay to see. They pay to see me doing slightly different. I'm playing a role, but I'm really me. And it is the odor that comes off me and goes through the screen that is what makes people pay for a ticket. And you think now it's like we're just kind of so far past that, every that Brando kind of won.
So somebody quick in the chat room said 1960 podcast. What?
You've been talking about this a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm working on a thing. It's taking longer than I wanted to because it involves me actually physically reading things, which is not my strong suit. And I can find a million other reasons to not want to do it, and very, very, very good things that I can be doing instead of it. But I want to do a multi-part podcast about the 1960 election and specifically the conspiracy that the Kennedy camp consorted through Frank Sinatra and the mob to win the 1960 election against Richard Nixon. And so it's going to be focusing primarily on both Nixon at the time, Kennedy, the American mob, which at that point was really kind of becoming something that in the public consciousness what we were about to be fascinated by. And, of course, the Rat Pack and really politics in Hollywood and politics in music, which pre-1960 was something very different than what would happen post-1960 and really even to this day. The idea of activism from that perspective is something that like took a substantial step forward with the friendship of Frank Sinatra and JFK.
Oh, very cool.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. Really, really looking forward to it. Gentlemen, it's been after.
Yeah.
Great. Good shows, everybody.
All right. I got to run.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to head out going to get some lunch. We're going to have Cord Killers in about 2.5 hours or so with Nicole Lee. She'll be on. Bye, Andrew. Justin, you got anything else coming on today?
See you guys later.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, I'm here.
Oh,
I mean, I don't have to run right now.
I was just asking the people if you have any other shows today.
No, normally we'd have 1-900 Wrestling, but we recorded an episode while Dills was here, so I'm gonna just post that.
Very cool. All right, well, we're gonna see you guys in a little bit for Cord Killers then. Same bat channel, same
big episode. We'll see.
Oh yeah, that's right, we will. All right, bye guys.
Peace out.
Let's get it.